Please.
Can you see that okay? Hi, Dave.
No, we're seeing all the slides, not just presenter mode.
Slideshow, you mean?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
There we go.
Right, perfect. Hi, Dave. Are you on? You're not, I can't hear you, Joanna.
I was just going to say, so thanks for joining us for the Circular Economy Awareness session. We've had a couple of technical issues this afternoon even. It's a big topic, circular economy, and Paul is going to be leading us through with some of his great experience in this area. I'm very knowledgeable here, so he'll be taking the helm. If we want to do introductions from the next slide, Paul, we can just introduce ourselves and do a quick welcome.
Yeah.
So I'm Jo, I'm the Managing Director of the HBXL Skills Academy, and Paul is here as one of our job skills and employment tutors, and he's also part of a network of social value groups and construction task forces where circular economy is a really hot topic and really important one for construction, not just big companies, but also for smaller firms as well. And we're going to be finding out the whys and wherefores today. So without further ado, Paul, I'm going to hand over to you to run through what we're going to be covering during today's session.
Thanks, Joanna. We've been asked to include this in the content of boot camps and for these drop-in sessions because it's just one of the issues that the industry's been really trying to tackle since data has become such an important factor in the industry. And it's got an appalling record, you know, and sharing information and setting up ways of addressing bad practice is something that has been in place for, say, 12, 13 years now. And now, obviously, with changes in legislation and implications for not meeting those commitments, we're having this session to make small builders aware that it is a big topic. It's not going to go away. But similar to everything else, there is a lot of support available so that you can keep up to date with your responsibilities and the best way to access that support to make sure you're ahead of the game. So we're basically just going to get around the whole. It's a vast topic, and we've only got an hour, but and we'll send these slides at the end of this session as we do everything else. And there's links to ongoing support in these as well. But we're basically going to cover what the circular economy is, why it's important, what are the principles behind it, a wee bit about embodied carbon, why your business can benefit if you know you're on board with a circular economy agenda. Waste and construction go hand in hand, as you'll see with some of the figures. So how do we minimise that? How do you factor that into your projects to save you time and money? And some practical information about how embedding this into your business can make it more effective and efficient. As always, there's a lot of information, so please just chip in at any time. So the whole thing about circular economy means nothing, or as little as possible gets sent into landfill. That is the worst case scenario. And as I say, since data has become a bigger part of projects, once the industry gets its hand, gets into something, realises how much money is actually getting wasted, they don't mess about in terms of putting things in place to make it better. One recent case study was a project outside Glasgow to build a new fire rescue service training centre, and the main contractor commissioned a waste management consultancy who said, what would you do normally? And they told them, and then they set up a system, different skips for different materials, all that kind of stuff. And it saved 40% in terms of costs just in one project. So you can imagine the finance director's reaction, and they get put right across the business immediately. And you'll see some of the links on here, the way big companies are sharing information about how they achieve targets in that regard. But I think that was only 7 or 8 years ago. So it's about making sure the culture of it's in a skip, I've signed for it, it's nothing to do with me, is a thing of the past as much as possible. The lack of responsibility from when things leave a site, it literally was out of sight, out of mind, you know. The skip has been collected, it's nothing to do with me, as long as you signed for it. So that's where it's a different approach. So many benefits, financial, as I mentioned by that case study, environmental, you know, landfill is not good, is the bottom line. But that, you know, the whole figures around construction, different projects require different types of materials, obviously. But you know, the figures don't lie, you know. So 60% of material use in waste production in the UK for one industry, and then as an industry globally, if you think about it, you know, digging up quarries, etc., lorry loads getting sent to and from sites, that's a lot of greenhouse gas getting produced. And the whole principle, as I say, is financial and environmental, to make the industry more efficient. And some of the things that have been set up, you look at it and go, that's common sense. Why did it take so long? But once an industry is working in a certain way, it's not going to change overnight. But there has been significant progress since, you know, 2012, when people started sharing data more openly. And there's a diagram. There's loads of different versions of this, but coming up with the same principle, you know, that if people design and produce things more effectively, you've got a whole better way of managing resources so that waste is minimised, and then stuff that gets sent to landfill from sites is minimised. That's the whole principle. Keep it above. If it's above the ground, keep it above the ground. And if you don't need it, somebody will. And it's how you set up a system so that that can be implemented effectively. One example of this about how waste was embedded into the industry was plasterboard used to be cut to 10 foot by 4 foot, and modern housing is 8 feet ceilings. And it was a chance conversation, it was nothing deliberate. A house builder met the manufacturer at an industry event, and then they come up with a brilliant idea to cut it to 8 foot by 4 foot. So right away, you've eliminated 20, no, right away, it takes a couple of months to set up production schedules to change how that product's manufactured to that size. But that's just one product that's had 20% waste factored into it before it even arrived in site. So when 10 foot by 4 foot section arrived in site, the first thing they do was cut off a 2 foot section, chuck that in a skip. Now, that's not economically or environmentally sustainable when you've got that amount of waste without even thinking about it. So that's how things can happen through conversations. That's an example, you know. And then this is where the industry is looking at everything. Projects used to be their own bubble, you know, the whole principle: get on site, get your project finished, get your bonus, move to the next project. We didn't really have to talk to too many people. So there was no system to then send excess stuff from one site to another. And again, if you think about the amount of waste that generates just by having projects as their own bubble, it's staggering. It actually took to the 21st century before they started addressing it. What sites used to do was just advertise and say, we've got 10 pallets of bricks, we've got X amount of radiators, whatever, and then with a van could go and collect it and then sell it on. But you know, the treating every project in isolation just made that inevitable. But now you've got internal systems, so that if you've got excess or something on your site and there's a site 5 miles up the road, that will get sent there without much hassle. Sharing information is looked at, you know, has encouraged all this sharing of data, good practice and bad practice, and because it's so easy now to get good practice across the industry, that's what gets highlighted and that's what is expected to be rolled out. So, you know, factoring in for the design stage is stage one. That resource efficiency stuff, it's if you take house building, think how many different products are out on a site throughout the lifespan of the project. Just taking the attitude, if we don't need it, we'll just get somebody with a van who might give me a couple of £100 cash for what I don't need. There's no way to run an industry. Material recovery, there's a lot of stuff around turning plastic into different other usable materials, oil for heating, back to its original state, all this kind of stuff. And plastic's a huge part of that. You think about how much wrapping is on pallets of bricks, refrigerators, everything that arrives in site tends to be wrapped in very high grade plastic. So what do they do with that? Closed loop systems, again, just to make sure if somebody can use it, they know when they can access it and collect it and use it, rather than just advertise for people to come pick things up, creating a cash culture. Anything that's cash based is obviously hard to record by the very nature of that. So just changing the way companies operate in terms of recording what gets sent to a site, what gets used, what's excess, preventing excess for future projects based on that information, and transferring any excess to other projects rather than to a guy with a white van that comes up to collect it. Massive savings so far across the industry, and they'll just get tighter and tighter as more and more projects adopt this type of approach. You know. What about you, Dave? Have you got any waste management, you know, policies that you have to put in front of councils when you're starting projects? Has this come up for you yet?
I think Dave is possibly self-muted, not muted to our end. So when he came back in, maybe didn't.
Oh, it says I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
You can now. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, like, because mine is sort of like domestic extensions, but I do separate, because I mean, like the things with plasterboard and stuff like that now, you know what I mean? I know I'm going to get charged. So, I mean, it's at the moment, like, I've got, like, where we're getting close to the end of the job, we've got sort of, we've got loads and loads of pallets. And, you know, like, I've got to get someone to pick it up. Like, my neighbour was supposed to do it last week and then he had a problem. Like, but it's like I've got all the plasterboard separate, and then he will go to the dump and he will dump it off there. I'll pay him to do that. But you know, if I throw it in the skip and all that, it's no good going into landfill, and they're only going to charge me and charge me extra for those skips. So it's yeah, it's something I've got to look at.
No problem. I mean, as there's new legislation coming in April. We'll talk that through.
Yeah.
as well, you know. But I just make you aware that it's just going to
It's
become.
very expensive. It's like waste. You know, having stuff taken away is very expensive.
Yeah.
You know, it's only getting dearer and dearer.
Aye.
And like sort of like where the house that we've done like this extension at the moment, it's only 4.5 years old. So where we've done cut throughs and stuff like that, we've got loads and loads of like PIR board like insulation that's come out of cavity. Now I've got a load of that sitting there. We can't use it again, but if I put it in the skip, it's going to fill the skip up. And like it's just sort of like, what do you do with it?
Yeah. No, it's a live issue in projects of all sizes, and I think you know the amount of information that you'll see throughout this should be a bit of pressure off you moving forward. But it's a you know that 60%, you know, comes from everything, you know, quarries to domestic projects, the whole lot. As I say, the more we can get a message across that there is support available, the better for everybody, you know.
I guess with something like with PIR board, there is specialist recycling that's possible. I don't know if there's anybody near you. Obviously, you can use some of those kind of offcuts for kind of other smaller projects, letting people know that you'd be using. Obviously, that is not.
But again, it goes
into patching gaps and stuff like that. But.
It goes into the whole thing about the transportation, which really sort of like does my head in with PIR board. I can't understand why when we can do everything that we can on a phone or a laptop, and we're supposed to put a man on the moon 50 odd years ago and all these different things, and we've got insulation as thick as we have. Why can't they produce a thermal board that would be a lot smaller than like the size of the PIR boards and all that? Because cavities are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it costs so much money. That PIR board and stuff like that is so light, but it's so big. So like shifting it around, the amount of money it costs to shift that around, like on a lorry, because you might have a lorry full and it'll probably only build about 10 houses.
Yeah, well, I guess you won't be shocked by this, I'm sure. But like, if it's not ending up in kind of recycled, I think it's something like 70% of PIR type board ends up in landfill. But my facts that from the last time I read anything around it, that if you can recycle it, it uses up 90% less energy than producing new foam. So you're right. It's one of those products that's it's massive in terms of recycling. And when we talk about embodied carbon later, which it sounds really complicated, like what the heck is embodied carbon? But that's really just thinking about how much energy it costs to produce it from the raw, from the raw ingredients, raw materials, whatever it is made up from. So we're using a lot of energy to create the foam board, and it's a crime for it to go into landfill if we can reuse it, but it's obviously only on the right project. So I don't know if in your neck of the woods there's kind of like advertising of product for for collection, if anyone's doing any odd jobs, that kind of thing. But as you say, it is time and the faff factor, isn't it? Transporting it around, waiting for people to collect it, up, all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, when you think about it, those figures there, about 70% ends up in landfill. It's not recycled. So I guess the worst case is you have to get it recycled, isn't it? If passed. But yeah, good shout about that. And it's really trying to order sensibly in the first place. You can't do anything about what you were just saying because it's come out of an existing building. But if it's new, really making sure that you've got the appropriate ordering going on, doing CAD takeoffs if you can, so that you're really sizing up properly.
I use some software.
Good.
I use the software to estimate it.
Yeah. So I guess it's making sure, yeah, you're ordering properly in the first place, and you're not having to keep going to and fro to collect product as well. Well, really quickly, Paul, what was that slide 2? Sorry, just for anyone that didn't see that was watching. So, oh, sorry, that was that one. Apologies. Yeah. Okay.
So that's you summed it up there, Dave. You know, but there is a whole set of resources to make this easier. And I've got a meeting in London tomorrow, and that's going to be one of the things that comes up actually, is a central database, so that people know where material can be used. You mentioned the pallets. I mean, that's one of those invisible things, you know. But when I got asked to set up a project in a prison, actually getting damaged pallets back into circulation. And you'll see it on the Lovell Homes thing, but there's so many of them, it's like literally hiding in plain sight, you know. So it should be easy enough to arrange for you to tap into because I've seen them turned into, you know, furniture for gardens and nursing homes, and you know, you can do a lot when you strip a pallet down, and also keeping it in use, you know, as a pallet. So that kind of network's already there, so it should be easy to set you up with a contact for West London.
There's lots of return and reuse schemes, sorry, Paul, on pallets, and obviously recycling services, and also other kind of like social value projects where you know the pallets might want to be used by, like, I don't want to sound sexist here, but by kind of like man shed type groups and stuff where they're meeting and doing stuff with you know, with wood, building stuff on the, you know, weekend or an afternoon, those kind of things. I've got one local to us here, and that kind of thing, you know, is lapped up. They want to jump on that, and they do loads of stuff within the garden, that kind of thing. And obviously then it can be used, you know, on site as well for things like temporary fencing or storage, that kind of thing, other stacking, protective flooring in muddy areas, that kind of thing. It's just all about it not being immediately just going into a skip, which, as you say, is very expensive.
And chuck it away.
Yeah.
So getting that mentality in is a lot of work has gone into that. And it's just a case of keeping it going, you know. But that, you know, material recovery. I was talking about this in another session a few months ago, Dave, and there's a big property company in London who are using 40% reused steel in a development. They've taken for one development in London that's getting demolished and then put into another. But one of the students on the class said 6 years ago that was illegal. She looked at it for part of her dissertation for her master's on the topic. So things move behind the scenes, you know. That something that wasn't doable, people have obviously looked at how you can make it doable. If you think about the cost of getting steel manufactured then brought into London, etc., whereas this is just driving it for the site where it's getting taken out 2 miles up the road to another site. But again, that's something that wasn't doable 6 years ago until there was regulations put in place to make it happen. So the whole cultures and awareness is there. It's just how it's implemented. But things like pallets are so vast. It's like until you start looking at the numbers, you go, and then obviously having a management system to make sure the volume of pallets on a site is recorded, and then once they are collected, it's that whole thing about what happens when it leaves the site, as much as managing it properly on site. So the days of saying a sign for it are finished, with serious financial penalties, and then the kind of stories that are on the papers about fly tipping are now focusing central government to make these different government departments work closer together, you know. So that closed loop system just makes sure everything is around different projects, so people are aware of it, so they can be collected and used. Civil sector's way ahead of this with obviously big muck shifting projects for HS2, moving that up to other parts of the project for the next set of rail track or whatever. setting up lagoons, the amount of wildlife reserves that have been set up over the last 15 years, different parts of the country, with soil from a big project, you know, as a start point. Loads of them, you know, wetlands. I think that's the name for it, the wetlands. So then that's a long-term community benefit place. You can take the kids or grandkids, see the ducks, etc. You know, so using it properly does have a long-term impact. And then this philosophy's got to be part of the thinking, you know. How can we keep waste at a minimum? It's part of the whole communication process that people never used to talk to each other in construction about anything other than the nature of the contract, which is fair enough. But when you get to the stage you've got these figures about waste, it points out that the more communication there is, the more likely it is that we can make things better. So again, as Joanna said, you know, embodied carbon sounds very doctory thing, you know, but it's just basically into the whole thing, you know, from making something to using it. And your insulation board's a classic example. I mentioned you know, the plasterboard situation. So 20% of waste was eventually factored out, but 6 months later when they changed the production cycle in the factory to get them down from 10 feet to 8 feet, which isn't an overnight exercise, having been in the place. It's that big. You've got mountain bikes to get from one end of the production line to another. So, but you know, getting the problem in front of as many people is the best way of trying to get a solution. And I think with everything that's going to be going on with retrofit, etc., that we've discussed, I'll definitely flag up the insulation board tomorrow at the meeting, where been asked to come up with some ideas to make things in London a bit more effective. So the whole process from resource to product, I'd say it's never been under so much scrutiny. I've been to presentations from the big material suppliers, Tarmac, sorry, not called Tarmac anymore, Aggregate, the people that own quarries and then turn it into cement or plasterboard, whatever it is. And they're tackling this from two angles, obviously the environmental angle and the financial angle. So as energy becomes more expensive, the less energy you use in a process, the better. So once people get their heads around what's been discussed, it is a very reactive industry. You know, they will come up with stuff that works for as many people as possible. So, you know, I mentioned the steel. So if you look at a situation in London where, you know, the amount of new steel that's manufactured to come into projects in London is reduced by 50–60%. It's not just the steel, it's the transport, it's the energy costs of the manufacture and everything else that goes around that. The timber, I think I mentioned this, I'd certainly mentioned other sessions, but a lot of the big house builders have got their own forests now, so that they've got control over their timber frames. And a number of years ago, I met one of them at an event in Scotland on this topic, and he was saying that his factory, it was 4% waste, and he got somebody in to look at everything. They'd set things up to be 2% waste, because you'll never get 0% waste with wood, because there's always going to be some sort of dust emitted when you cut it, etc. And that was it. Everything ran to 2% waste. And then that's when they started looking at other parts of the business, and they had no idea of the data. So then they started collecting data about bricks and fridges and blah, blah, blah. So if you think about an industry where they can pinpoint the amount of waste in one aspect, like the timber, and then not have a clue about the rest of it, they're not going to allow that to continue. They can't. You know, their finance directors, their shareholders will be saying, what's going on here? So when they drill into one part of the process and find there's ways they can make it efficient, they then just try and take it across the board, you know. And this recycled stuff is just never going to go away. As we just mentioned, the pallets, just off the top of my head, the things I've seen up and down the country that pallets can be used for, if they're not kept in the supply chain as pallets, you know. And great, you know, that's what it's all about. Wood's a natural product, so if we don't burn it, it must be something better we can do with it. So that's the kind of, if you think about the number of products across the industry that use concrete, steel and timber, you can just see where anything that's looking at reducing that is going to be viewed quite favourably, you know. There's that cycle again. You know, don't put anything into the ground if you don't have to. And the more people are aware of that, the easier it is. But even when the official systems, the figures around fly tipping that are coming out are absolutely horrendous. Because there's two government departments supposedly in charge, and one won't charge the other for cleaning it up if they can't find the culprit. But when you look at the size of some of these operations in the fly tipping, it's been on for a lot of years, so somebody's turned a blind eye somewhere, you know. Yeah. I thought, back to that timber thing, Dave. I can't remember, but it's in one of the big house builders has got a forest in I think it's Buckinghamshire. Most of the ones I was aware of were in the Highlands of Scotland, you know. But there's one within the M25, but that's just one house builder. I don't know if there's others, you know. So again, just a summary there. What happens if this kicks in? You don't use as much material, reduce the carbon emissions, you know, lower material costs as a result of that. Reduce waste disposal fees because you get more effective operating systems, so you're chucking less stuff away. Your reputation is only going to go one way when you're known as a effective, well-managed contractor. And then again, that's got knock-on effects for energy bills because you're on site for, you know, shorter periods of time. This prefabrication, they've never got it right here. But some of those tower blocks that for the student accommodations, the only traditional construction is the lift tower, the lift shaft, sorry. And the flats themselves are built in a factory and transported to the site to be attached. And that's where they save a lot of money, you know. And coincidentally, we had a guy in one of the first cohorts who worked in the biggest modular building in London at the time. And I said to him, what was it like? He said, it was the best job I ever had. He said, I never get rained off. Anything I needed, there's a wee guy on a mountain bike, came up to me every hour and said, how are you getting on? Do you need anything? He typed something into his wee iPad, and then he went away on his mountain bike and came back with what I needed. And modular is, you know, for city centre, high intensive, you know, sites that don't have a lot of access. That building as much as possible off site is just, you know, the project I was talking about. They built one beside it in Croydon, and that was on that Grand Designs a few weeks ago. And the figures are astonishing. You know, it's like 18 months quicker from getting the lift shaft up to people actually moving in. Councils love that because that means there's people paying council tax. It's just, I can't think of any borough that's not looking at that model, and it just makes everybody's job a lot easier. It's no solution for everything, but any sort of 30-40 floor development for accommodation, that's the way it's going. And obviously the company that leads in that is Tide, but their competitors are looking at their figures and just copying it. You know, you can't argue with that. If you think about what I said about the fire building, a 40% reduction in waste management costs because they put a system in place. So had it been a 4%, the finance director might have went, well, but 40% he's legally bound to make that happen across all his projects. And that's where good practice can really go across, you know. So the jobs on the site are basically crane drivers, traffic marshals, etc. The actual trades are in a factory outside the M25, and they get paid. There's nothing about people losing work. They still get paid the trade rates, and they probably make more money because they don't get rained off, you know.
Well, Paul, it's not just the big structural stuff as well. Obviously, it's moving into things like, modular type bathrooms in like HMOs and stuff. In quite small. It doesn't have to be huge, big, big projects as well, and so it can go in quicker. And also, you've got less of the faff with kind of like leaking and things like that. In terms of those kind of like bathrooms, that you can like literally just put in the whole unit. So.
Yeah, I remember about 25 years ago, I worked on a hotel in by Heathrow, and they was dropping the bathrooms in like 25 years ago, and we was like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? It made so much sense. Just like the bathrooms, they drop, the next floor will go on, do a bit of work, and then they'd all get dropped in again. It was like.
Yeah, and the trick obviously with it all now is making sure that it's of a quality that it doesn't need replacing too quickly. That's the thing, isn't it? And I think the whole point of the circular economy is trying to choose things for kind of longevity as well as speed today. And I think it's really interesting, that whole embodied carbon piece, where it was saying about 50 to 70% of the kind of the carbon is basically at the production stage. It's like that early point, and lots less of it is like the later in use. So we've got to really focus our attention on, do we really need to start from scratch with this, or can we be using recycled aggregate? Can we be using recycled timber or steels, that kind of thing? And then if I'm taking it out of this property that I'm just working on, where can it go from my side? Where and who can I partner with? And it's been a bit creative, and it does require some thought. I think it's all about, it is again about the planning side. It doesn't happen overnight, for sure, but I think with the cost savings of the waste, as you're saying, it's getting more and more expensive, isn't it? Every time we review our skip rates in our software, it's all like, oh my God, it's gone up again. And there's so much stuff that you can't just take to, you don't call it the tip at all anymore. It's recycling centres. I'm often told by my husband, it's not the tip, it's a recycling centre. We are, trying to reuse these items. So yeah, there's lots that we can do as well in terms of things like tiles and brick recovery and that kind of thing as well, obviously, which I'm sure you do. Anyway, I'll let you carry on, Paul.
Yeah, no, it's a benefit for everybody, but that picture's very topical based on what we've discussed, because that's got everything in it. So there's a cost to sort that when it gets taken away from the site, Yeah. And that's where setting up something properly, where there's 3 or 4 skips, depending on the size of the project. But a lot of that stuff that happened in Glasgow was, you don't even question it now. But it's like anything, it's got to happen for it to spread, Yeah. But that type of skip was commonplace on a big site, and it's part of the induction that if you don't follow the policy, you get asked to leave the site. It's got to be. It's not really well saying we're trying to do this, but it's got to be enforced. There's some figures on there. Conscious of the time, Dave, about the waste that related to the industry, and then that the stuff about fly tipping. It's only got to that stage because it's never been monitored. Had every site had one of these waste management policies where do you have a waste transfer license? What do you do with that waste transfer license? Show me where you put that waste after I've signed for it. And it's back to, it sounds like a lot of work. Well, it's not, because before you authorise somebody to take away your waste, they've got to supply that information to you as a registered waste transfer. But a big part of this, I think the licence is about 60 quid. So there's a lot of stuff structurally to be done to get rid of this issue. If it's so cheap to buy a licence, and then that's you get the waste, and nobody's going to chase up what you do with the waste. You can see where the temptation comes in to take cash and chuck it somewhere where it doesn't affect you. But you know, some of these fly tips, the scale of them is horrific, and then you've got the issues around that. You know, you've got rat infestation, you've got flies, you've got issues with all the poison getting into the water table and stuff like that. So it's not a trivial issue. And the size of some of these sites shows that it's very well organised, and people have been paying cash just to take a headache away, which isn't really going away if you think about it, because we're all going to have to pay for this to get sorted properly, you know. And again, that some links on there for you. With the Confederate Constructor scheme that I mentioned, I've got some good advice on there, and that's covered on that slide. But that kind of skip was commonplace, you know, and because it could be commonplace, there was nothing. If the site manager had an audit trail, it was how much you paid for the skip and who collected it. That was it. What happened to the skip, where it went to, nobody monitored, which is why we get into such a mess in the first place. But as I say, these links are there for you to use after this. But the money's incredible, you know. It is. See, in that first story, when you read it, it's to do with the nature of the punishment. The punishment doesn't match the damage you do with this waste fly tipping. So the rewards are far. If you do get caught, you're talking about 18 months. Right, so you can make millions and then do 18 months. A lot of people will say that's a good deal. If you make millions in drug dealing, you're going to look at 10 years plus. So that's the way some people's brains work, you know. And now they've got the ability, you know, to clean up these long-established illegal waste sites is only going to come to the taxpayer.
Yeah, and there are ways on that previous slide, and I think you put a link on there for how to report fly tipping or illegal waste dumping. I don't know if it was a slide which one there was.
But there is, website, so there is
that one there. Sorry, yeah, that one. So it's a bit like reporting anything like to do with health and safety or modern slavery. If people are doing things cheap and cheerfully or illegally, you know, there are ways of reporting it. So yeah, that links is useful there.
But the figures I mean that last story, Dave, I'll just click on that. If you look at the size of this.
Right. Oh yeah, I think I know what. That one where it's all down the side of the.
No, that's a recent one in England. This is in Northern Ireland. Now this is 70 football pitches, Dave. To put it in scale, 70 football pitches. Now you can't tell me that happens without people taking 600,000 tons. 600,000 tons before they get caught, you know. And then I think this case they're actually taking the money back, or trying to take the money back. But if you've got away with something that long, you've got good lawyers, you've got good accountants, you've got things in other people's names, you know. But yeah, that's what happens if people say it's nothing to do with me, you know.
Yeah.
The one that's been on the telly is right beside the TV recently is beside the motorway.
Yeah.
And how somebody can leave the same place every night for X amount of months with all the cameras that are everywhere, you know.
Yeah.
And just dump and then go back, repeat. It's about 10 foot high or something, and it's close to a water system that feeds the water supply. And you just go, and now they're finding them. The one that's on the London news regularly, Joanna, is one in just outside Romford, which spontaneously combusts because it's maybe got batteries in it now, you know. And they can't open their windows. They've got this horrible chemical smoke, and the whole thing has been about who owns the land, who's responsible. It just nothing's happened. there's
must be
no,
toxic. That must be absolutely toxic, and the fire risk, horrendous.
everything there. Yeah.
Mm. Must undermine the house values and the land value completely.
Nothing. And then breathing in toxic fumes, rat infestation, you know, no, the only person getting anything out of it is the person picking up the cash, you know, who probably doesn't live in the area. So again, just some bullet points there, Dave, you know, the nothing you don't know about, but between the supply chain school and the Considerate Constructors link, there's a lot of good support there to keep you updated with what can keep you and your business up to date with what's going on legally, and pick up links to good practice that you can maybe bring into your own projects moving forward, you know. But there's definitely got to be a pallet company, a pallet recycling company within 10 miles of where you are, because that is quite well established now, the pallet stuff, you know. Again, very recent. I'd say that would be 10 years, if that. That they first realised how many pallets were actually sent to building sites, and then when they tried to find out what happened to them, there wasn't many answers coming forward, you know.
Are they not reused and taken back by the suppliers? Just out of interest, because I've never considered this before. But is it because a bit like, you know, the ton bag type situation, they're not necessarily safe to be reused? They might be damaged in some way. Is that what's going on? Is that why they can't be reused by the supplier?
Well, partly that. The damaged one, the ones about the damaged ones, we were asked to look at for getting into a prison and then get them to fix them and then get them back into circulation. But a big part of it was there was no management to. If you think about how many products come on, just take a house building site. Everything arrives in a pallet, but they arrive from maybe 40, 50 different suppliers. So there's nobody's controlling the pallets, if you know what I mean. They were controlling the product rather than providing information about the pallets.
I think pallets as well. Like, it's because because there's several different sizes and types.
Yeah.
Like, because a Euro pallet, you get about, like, I think you used to get about 2.5 or 3 quid. Like, my mate's got a courier business, and he runs a few 7.5 tonners as well. And I know the drivers used to if they could get a Euro pallet, they'd store them and they'd just stack them, and then they'd have a divvy up. Somebody would go down. So all those Euro ones, they get about 3 quid for them, returning them to someone like with Euros. But then you've got all the smaller, cheaper like ones that are just sort of like specifically made for the product that they're getting, that they're sending.
That's true. Yeah,
flimsy. So you've got no uniformed sort of like way of storing, moving, you know, and being like available for.
You'd have thought that they would have some kind of situation, a bit like, you know, like with glass bottles and stuff. I'm show my age now, you know, but they've been recalled by the actual supplier, so that they can be reused again for those kind of unusual sites.
I'm trying to think what company charged me for a load of pallets recently. Like, sort of like within the last couple of years, I had to pay a deposit on the pallets for all the blocks. Trying to think which job that was.
Yeah,
but
well, that's interesting. They could be taken back then.
Yeah. Well, I made sure they all went back. I'm trying to think what job it was, but it was like sort of. I know, like it was quite a few quid in pallets.
Yeah, well, that's. I just jumped a few slides there, Dave, because that's probably the biggest pallet project in the country. This pallet loop, which is basically what you're talking about. It's some organisation taking responsibility for collecting them, regardless of the size or the condition, and then they sort them. You know, those that can be repaired, those that, if they can't be repaired, a community project can pick them up to turn them into furniture, etc. If they can be sent back into the industry, and that's Lovell Homes, owned by Morgan Sindall. So it's that. It's the same principle. That there's so much of it, but nobody knew the whole picture because you only dealt with pallets in their own context, you know. And the figures that we were looking at for getting into that prison, and the prison was in Uttoxeter, which is north of Birmingham, but it's halfway between the M1 and M1 and M6.
Yeah.
And there was loads of work going on in both those motorways, and all the house building. So we were looking at something like 9,000 pallets a week going into that prison.
A lot, isn't it? Yeah.
And that's just a 40-mile radius of that prison, Joanna. Aye, so you can imagine what's. But again, it seems to be that was in the very early days of things, trying to look at situations and what you can do to make it better. The whole principle of that was that the guys that did all the work with the pallets in the prison, the money was going into an account so they could get a dumper ticket or something like that, so they've got a job when they come out, you know. But this stuff is all brand new, you know. And I put the link to that report in the slides just so you can see how Level Homes have done it. But I think that pallet loop is pretty much national now, you know. And again,
Yeah.
for you, even just for you to feed in your pallets to them to collect, that's something you can put on your reporting system for a project, you know, because you're showing you know where it's going.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of, to these sort of chats is to make you aware. We're not just talking about stuff, but hopefully you can see that there's a way that it can benefit you and your business, you know. But that's exactly a classic example. Plastic's another one because the packaging is the highest grade highest grade plastic there is. And at the time I was looking at that for that prison, that was something like 600 quid a ton. You know, so it's no inconsiderable sums of money. And if you're, you know, you said 2 or 3 quid a pallet, well, I just gave you a figure there. That's 9,000 pallets a month for that area. That's a lot of money going into a prison to train people properly, you know. So you can look at sums of money regionally and everything else, and then can you come up with a way of making it use? But things like the pallet loop are national now, and it's just a case of you logging onto their website and seeing, you know, where the nearest collection point is to where you're working.
Paul, may I ask? I might put you on the spot here. But it's
Yeah.
out of interest. I know, like, we do a lot of plastic recycling, don't we, all in our homes, in terms of, you know, packaging, crisp packets, biscuit packets, you know, off you know, microwave dinners, whatever. Is there a way, do you know, within construction, this high grade plastic recycling it? Is there anything that we can do with that? Do you know?
All they're doing now is with these big sites with the more effective sorting systems is they can guarantee the plastic gets sent somewhere. Now, again, it's such a fast moving. A lot of the countries see, again, at the start of this, they said, right, we've signed for this waste, we've sent it there, and where they sent it was basically a boat to China or Turkey or somewhere. So we're just moving it away from the UK. We weren't actually dealing with it. But what's going on, even to you know, to reduce the amount of plastic, there's working groups in the supply chain school where the manufacturers of bricks, etc., are on a working group with the house builders to reduce the amount of plastic that's generated at the start. So they calculate everything now. But I don't know anything of scale with the plastic other than some big recycling company getting into the prisons or going onto sites and selling it themselves. But there's certainly nothing with the amount of social value we were looking at by sorting it in a prison and bailing it and turning it back into oil. But there's something going on in Kent around that, but turning it back into heating oil through quite an organic process. Whether it's scalable, the whole thing about this is whether it's scalable, you know. But I'll take a note to find out about that. But that's the kind of potential. Once you see what's actually produced, then it's what can you do with it. And energy from plastic is a big opportunity. That full document is links on this. If you'll get it after this finishes, but it's quite interesting because they basically talked about a 95% reduction. Now, they're obviously a national house builder, and what they've put in their report is going to be there's going to be very little difference to what they've done, to what Barratt have done, to what Taylor Wimpey do. Once companies like that produce a document, if they're the first, their competitors are now saying, thanks very much, how do we do it, you know? But for businesses like yourself, Pallet Loop must be a good link.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that link at the top in that slide, that's lessons, webinars you can dial into, Dave, you know?
Yeah.
When you get a chance. But so a good thing about what's going on now is if you're on the sustainability school, you can always dip in and out as issues come up that you've got to address. And that's all we can hope you take for these sessions. But
yeah, see the thing with sort of like builders about my size and all that, it's because you haven't got the space on the jobs, because like you're working on sort of like domestic properties where you're lucky if you've got a drive or something, you know what I mean, like to sort of stack a skip. So like sort of like and because I used to do a lot of work in Richmond and Twickenham, and like those houses when they weren't built for cars really. Those were, you know what I mean, they wasn't built. The streets weren't built.
Not for the amount of cars, that's right.
They're very limited. So like the whole thing about like sort of like waste management is a real sort of thing, because you've got to stack things. You've got to get people to come along to do things. So for me, like, you know, say this job at the moment, I can have a skip on the drive. I'm lucky enough that there's enough room to get one skip on the drive. But then it is like sort of like the thing of getting like a man with a van, you know, like the open back trucks, like with a cage, and then get them to take the lighter stuff and then pay them their fee, and then hopefully they do the dump and do the dump responsibly, where they unload timber in the timber park, you know, like sort of like the recycling centres are moving it around that way. It's sort of like, you know, for me, that's the most sustainable way I can sort of like contribute to that sort of responsibility. You know,
I'll let you and Joanna finish. I've got an appointment with another candidate at 6 for his. He's just passed his STS, so he's on it. Listen, thanks very much for your time. Have a great Christmas, and I hope to hear from you in 2026. And I'll speak to you tomorrow, Joanna. All right?
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, just before we sign off, Dave, I was just going to say, I wonder if there's other ways of doing that sorting, so you haven't just got the big skip, you know, in terms of like the bigger skip bag type things, you know, more like those. I can't, without naming a brand, all I can think of is, you know, those Hippo type skip
Hippo bags.
Where you've got several smaller.
Yeah, well, to be quite honest, Joe, what I usually do is sort of like when we have sort of like aggregates dropped in bags, what I try and get youngsters to do is not just rip the bags open so they can shovel it easier, but like we sort of like hold a few back so we can shove the light stuff in there and shove polythene in there and move them around, sort of thing. So when we do get stuff taken away, it can be sorted pretty quick. But the thing is, me working around West London and all that, like, at the moment, because I'm working up by Reading, I've had a bit more room because obviously the place. But when I'm working, like London is sort of like so hard, even to get a skip.
Yeah, I can. You have to get really creative, don't you? And all.
I mean, digging foundations on like sort of like some of the terrace property, like the workers' terrace properties, like workers' cottages. But those workers' cottages, they go for 800, 900 grand. You know what I mean? But there's no room, and you might have a 3 foot, like you might have a 3 foot from like the front of the wall to the boundary wall. You know, and what you've got, even digging the foundations, a lot of the time we have to dig them and put them in polythene bags and stack them until we can get either a grab load or a bloke to drop a skip on the road for an hour.
Yeah, it's really challenging, isn't it? I've got a vision of a friend of mine that lives in London, and I'm just thinking of her. There's literally no space to do anything. I don't think she's probably even got 3 foot outside the front. It would be a skip and a skip permit, and obviously that's, you know, it's expensive.
And the thing is, if you try to get a skip permit, like if it's like most of the parking is permit parking. So then you've got to pay to like sort of like have that bay suspended, to get a skip on there, and it costs a fortune. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, it is. The practicalities of it are all very challenging, and it is all about the organisation. And one of the slides that we didn't see a huge amount of on with Paul was about those different stages of the project, and it really does start with that kind of design stage. And design is obviously not just the build itself, it's the site, it's the access, it's the where can I store things, and getting thoughtful at that point. And then I think the thing is once you've done that once or twice, for the next project you know what you're going to do, but you've got to have spent a bit of time being creative in
produced a template for that going to look look at jobs.
And I think as ever, and I know construction is just getting more and more expensive, and everything we do adds to it, whether things are more thermally performant or whether it's, you know, we've got particular zones, you know, that we can drive into or not, permits for this, permits for that, it's all becoming too expensive. But I think if you're not thinking about it early at that design point and building those costs into the quotation or giving them as options to your customer, depending on the client, that might be important to them. You know, you're going to be out of pocket doing it for the good of you being, you know, you're just a good person. It needs to be built into the whole process. It's the whole value.
I really think like sort of like there needs to be some responsibility of like sort of these fly tippers and stuff like that. There really needs to be a crackdown. You know, like so that it becomes. And I think it's more of a social issue as well. That before, I remember growing up and all that, like sort of like people were dumping stuff in the street. You know, like they would be really sort of, you know, people would be really sort of like annoyed. They'd be like sort of, but people just sort of like, I don't know about it now. I mean, like sort of like, I left here the other day, like where this area has really gone downhill. I like somebody tried burgling me last night. You know what I mean? Like,
oh my goodness! Sorry. Yeah,
but I came out here like the other day. There was 3 mattresses. What it is, I bought this place with my mate years ago, and like sort of like then I split out with my missus, but I'm back with her now. But she bought a place and I bought this, but for 20 years, and now and then we split up. Both all I've done so they got back together, and now so I was with her flat last night, and sort of like, and then. Like what happens? I keep getting a fox jumping on the fence, and then on my Apple Watch, like the ring, I've got a stick-up camera out the back, and like it went. I said, "Oh, that's that fox again." Then I looked, it wasn't. It was a bloke with like a baseball cap, climbed over, gloves on, and all that, jumped over my fence. Of course, I was 25 minutes.
Goodness. So what happened?
Well, I phoned up my neighbour, and he ran round here. I think he see the camera because like he jumped on the fence, and what it is, the soil vent pipe comes down, and then I've got the camera just the other side, so they wouldn't have seen it till he jumped onto the thing, and he looked right at the camera, and then he went down, but then after like sort of like so long, the camera went off again, and I think he must have gone against the fence, and he'd gone all the way down, and then jumped over the fence further down. But then the police come, and like at least I was able to like download and send off like, and apparently it happened a couple of other times down the road, like round the corner. So
he's obviously on a bit of a mission.
But that's it. But then I mean I came out, and because it's a corner property, because it's a corner plot. Me and my mate bought it, and like we want to build on the put a house on the side. So I came out the other day, and corner properties all the way round with corner properties, the fly tipping around it is getting a joke, because where there's a corner property, obviously you've got a big fence, big 6-foot fence or wall down those sides on the first bit of the road, didn't you? You know what I mean? You've got the one that faces there, then the road goes down there, so you've always, and like on every corner all the time, mattresses. It's
shocking that it's not picked up more, isn't it?
Well, now they're charging you 70 quid to pick up like your garden waste. On top of your council tax. So now they're paying that's £70. Not stupid. That is paying for like the motors that are going round and picking all the fly tipping up. It's got to be paid for somehow.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
so now they've scaled that down a bit, and then you've got more open back trucks that are going around each day, following on like sort of the reports, like it says on that gov.com. As soon as like they was there, but this is the annoying thing. There was 3 out there on the Friday morning when I went to put the rubbish out, and then
Yeah.
on the Sunday morning when I came back here, there was 5.
So people just saw a pile and thought they'd add to it.
It's that broken window thing, isn't it? And more people, that's what I would get back to the whole sort of morals, fibre and standard of like people's lives now. It's that they're dumping, we're dumping. And now like somebody thought like, oh, there's 3, we're dump ours there. And it's got to that mentality where people should be uproar, and it should be a real thing all over the news and all that, because it is a big thing, and it's about sort of like, you know, like people like sort of like living like cohesively together and sort of like
caring for their community.
But now it's but now it's sort of like so fractured, and people are doing that, and people look at it and just think, oh, they've done some things now. Before, years ago, they would have turned around and thought, who the bloody hell do they think they are? You know what I mean? It would have been a real big thing. People would have like seen them doing it. They would have been out their cars, shouting and screaming out and all that. But like now, people just see it doing it and just think like, well, they do it around the corner as well. So, oh well, that's a moment.
Well, I guess, well, no, fair. It's a fair moan. It's a fair moan. But I guess this is our opportunity for construction, even though it's we're talking about small projects. We're not talking about big tier 1 contractors. And I think a lot of people listening to this will think, oh my goodness, that's a thing for the big companies. Why am I thinking about it? But I think we can all, from that early design stage, be thinking carefully about what we're specifying, what we're using, what is ultimately going to be kind of replaceable straightforwardly in the future, rather than, you know, the whole thing having to be demolished, using recycled materials, recycled aggregate, all that kind of stuff. Where we have got costs of waste and the sorting of waste and think, you know, having to get people to responsibly take things away, that's got to be within the quotation. So at that quotation stage, we've got to be honest with our clients about that. When we're setting up the site, we need to be thinking about it. As you were saying earlier, you have real issues with the size of the site, which I totally accept is a big problem for smaller projects, home extensions, loft conversions, that kind of, wherever you got. But we need to think carefully about each site. During the works, as you were saying, not only have we got to be hiring responsibly, we've talked about before, like the whole modern slavery side of things, but those people that we are hiring, we need to induct them properly on our processes for waste. And it sounds like you guys are doing a really good job of that, and thinking about it throughout the whole project, what we do in which stage, and being really organised with that. And then thinking as well about the machinery that we're using. Can it be battery operated, so when we haven't got stinky diesel and, you know, that kind of petrol stuff going on? Can we use electric instead? And obviously then you can use some of that equipment indoors as well without risk of fumes and all that as well, which is good. And then thinking about if there is any equipment that you've left, you're handing over to your client, do they know how properly to use it and be effective in its use? Is there anything that you need to be doing at that stage as well to kind of, you know, finish up the project neatly in terms of any leftover materials and resources? So handover wise, and I guess site decommissioning, if you like, also sounds a bit grand, but how you're wrapping that up. And working with so many different organisations on waste now. I mean, I think even if you use something like Copilot or ChatGPT and said, what do I do with my construction waste in Kent or whatever, millions of different solutions would come up just to help get your brain going on it as a
it can be a selling point as well, because if like sort of like,
absolutely,
like the younger generation, like sort of like it would be the people who are buying the houses now, you know what I mean, sort of you know, like where it's sort of like we've had this so long. Like if you actually turn around and talk about responsible waste and stuff like that, and the way you're going to deal with things and trying to think about it, could be a bit of a selling point as well.
I absolutely agree. 100% agree. And I think if you have got a sustainability policy, again, you don't have to spend loads of money with anyone doing it. I'm sure the powers of the internet could assist, and there'll be lots of responsible websites that can help you with that, to help sell your business, just as well, like we've said about before, about having your health and safety done properly,
Yeah.
or managed properly, modern slavery, how you look after your people from a mental health perspective, your waste management. And you can, we have a software product called Health and Safety Expert, and within that there's a waste management plan. So you can actually get yourself organised on each and every
I did have a little
project.
test. I did have a little test of that.
Oh,
as well.
okay, cool.
Yeah,
Well, have a look at. There is a waste management template in there to help you just with this very short. But there's loads, you know, there's loads of resources. I'm sure if you Google waste management plans, construction or small construction sites, you'll get a plethora of different solutions to that. But yeah, a lot of things in life, it's the success of things like this is in the planning, and it definitely can add, I totally agree, can add value to your business. And I think after all, it's not this race to the bottom, the fastest, cheapest. We want quality products, quality buildings that last, you know, for literally lifetimes, and also you're paid for that in terms of the value you bring and your knowledge and management of your people and waste. So that's us done for today. There is the slides, and they'll be circulated after, and all of the different links in there. But hopefully, you know, you're obviously very engaged with these really important topics. So good luck with it, and lead the way in your area and with all your subbies and what have you, and get them having a good go of thinking about this as well. They need to play their part as well. So toolbox talks, lots of toolbox talks on waste and management and sorting and stuff. People don't know what they don't know. So
all right, Jo,
all right, thank you so much. Cheers.
Have a nice Christmas. All right, see you later.
Bye. Bye.